Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the NBA Front Office Show. We've got a lot of news to break down, a bunch of things going on in the NBA. Keith, let's kick things off with Marcus Smart, his comments about the Celtics, another tough loss for Boston. You go ahead and get going on that. I'll be back in about 20 minutes or so. That work?
Yeah, that's perfect.
Okay, perfect.
I would say go grab a sandwich, but it's a little late at night.
Yeah.
Maybe a bowl of ice cream or something. Go get things set up for the Lakers game that's going to start here in about an hour or so,
That's right.
and you can just kick your feet up. But yeah, not good times in Boston. They threw, and let's call it 24, probably about 34 minutes of their game against the Bulls.
Mm-hmm.
They looked really good. They were absolutely dominating Chicago. They came out with good energy, getting the ball up and down the floor, really playing really good defense, making a bunch of plays. And then with about 2 minutes to go in the third quarter, they lit up a couple baskets. And at the time, maybe didn't seem like a big deal, but those are the ones that kind of bite you because that's where you give the team hope. We talk about that a lot, especially with bad teams, but it happens with good teams too. And it would have been very easy for the Bulls to say, all right, we've gotten off to this really good start. We're on the road. Let's pack it in. And then in the fourth quarter, the Celtics became the first team in the shot clock era. So almost 60 years of basketball or almost, I guess over 60 years, maybe getting close to 70 years to have a lead of 14 or more points in the fourth quarter and lose by 14 or more points as they were outscored 39-11.
Not a record.
A couple more quick bad stats. The Bulls shot 13 of 16 in the quarter. Of their three misses, they rebounded two of them themselves. And then the third one went out of bounds for a team rebound back to the Bulls. The Celtics had 0 defensive rebounds in the quarter. And Boston was, I don't remember exactly what it was, but it was something bad of a lot of shot attempts themselves and 0 for 8 from 3. So this is not the full scale breakdown show. We're not doing that. We're going to do a lot of news because what came after that is where it got really kind of messy. Ime Udoka did his normal thing. Just for those who don't know, process is almost always the head coach speaks first in post-game media. And then because we're in this new Zoom world, there's no scrum setup where you can just approach players. What it becomes is now the teams provide X amount of players to the podium in the arena where whoever's covering the game in person will be, or via Zoom. For everybody else. So the Celtics announced that it would be Marcus Smart, Al Horford, and Jaylen Brown. Marcus Smart was first, came out, and initially it was just kind of normal stuff you'd hear. We let go of the rope. We gave him hope when we shouldn't have, blah, blah, blah. But then he kind of went in a little bit on Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown. Now, people have probably seen the quotes. If you have the chance to go watch him speak, it plays differently when you hear it than if you're just reading it. The one that is really floating around is that late in the game, they don't want to pass. And how he said it is very different than what he said there. And it was more of, we get them the ball. They don't want to give it up because they know like their job is to be the scorers and all that. And what basically Marcus Smart's point is I want the ball more, not to be a scorer by any means. That's not what he was saying. And people went crazy and reacted to that. He just wants to set up his two guys. He wants to make life easier on them. And he thinks they can do that. He also talked about they get slow. They go into these, ISO sets that have little to no ball and player movement. Isolation is the most common end game action. Every team runs it that way just about at the end of games. But
it's annoying.
The Celtics,
it's annoying, but it's true. But you see it. It drives me crazy. Like why do we go away from? And this is not just Celtics. This is everybody. Why do we go away from what got you to that point at the end of the game?
And I honestly,
it's crazy.
Truly believe that's why some games end up closer than they probably should be down the stretch. But the only team that I know of that really doesn't do it very often is Utah. Utah still runs their stuff, and now maybe that's why Utah wins a ton in the regular season and then fails in the postseason because they don't have that isolation game to go to. But anyway, it's been a problem all the way back to the bubble for the Celtics in close games. They walk the ball up the floor. They go to these isolation sets that have no movement. It's not even, oftentimes there's not even a screen. It's just playing straight out of, ISO, not even, working for a mismatch or anything. And it just becomes a mess. So Smart called that out, doesn't like it. That became a whole thing. Then Al Horford came out. As I tweeted, Al Horford played the role of Steve Rogers at Camp Lehigh, just jumping on grenades all over the place. Was very, took a lot of heat for things that, quite frankly, if you watch the game, were not his fault at all. He was one of the only guys who played well from tip to tail in that game. And then Jaylen Brown didn't speak, so we were all kind of hanging out, waiting, and then we got word from Celtics PR, Jaylen Brown's now not available. Jason Tatum also did not speak. That one's a little less clear because he was not necessarily going to. It's not every guy talks every night. It's generally, one or two of the star players will come out if you've got that many, and then kind of key role players from there. So, it was a mess. It just wasn't good. It was, this team's really, they're reeling now. That was a win they kind of needed to get against the Bulls. Now they're going on the road. They've got a very road heavy schedule. All of a sudden going into Orlando to play the Magic have been super frisky. They just erased a big deficit in Minnesota and blew out the Wolves. Really ran away with it at the end of that game. They're playing really, really hard. And then they got to go play Miami on a back-to-back. And we know the Heat are going to bring it. It's just, things might get worse before they get better for the Celtics.
And just to kind of paint the picture of how different things are in terms of now it's Zoom media sessions versus the way it used to be. It used to be you're all in the locker room, all the reporters, everybody is in there, and the players are getting ready to go and all that kind of. Now, finally, playoffs and all that kind of stuff, they're doing more like formal press conference type stuff.
Sure.
But I'm talking about just a regular game on a Monday night or whatever, right? You're all in the locker room. Everybody will crowd around one player. They're going to ask a bunch of questions. Eventually, the team's PR will say, "Okay, that's enough. We're gonna, that's it. That's last question," and then you'll move on and you go talk to somebody else. But everybody's in the same room, right? So you can go over to a player if you're a reporter. You can go over to a player that's maybe not scheduled to speak. And sometimes if you've got a relationship with that player, you'll be able to chat with them a little bit and you'll get some little key details. And those opportunities aren't there anymore because you're not there in person. It's also a little bit different just in terms of the structure where you're not face to face with somebody asking them questions and getting that kind of reaction from them. Instead, it's more of the formal press conference environment. So you lose some of that. I'm curious what would have come out of the Celtics locker room had people been able to be in there and how different that might have been, how different these things may have come across. It is weird, though, to say Jaylen Brown's available and then suddenly he's not. So something obviously changed there. And again, that's something where had this been 2 years ago, you probably would have had a better sense of what was going on because you would have seen it in person.
Yeah, or what would have happened is, and this happened regularly, is the player would have hung out in the training room.
Yep.
And you just wouldn't have seen them, and it would have been, all right, guys, we're done. Everybody out. And then that's when they would have finally come out. It was, the players had to work at it a little bit more. Whereas now, the team generally says, all right, here's who we're providing. Some of the franchises will ask, kind of the key beat writers, hey, who do you want tonight? And then they'll, kind of say, oh yeah, give me, X, Y, and Z stars of the game or whatever in that case. So it's for me this should have been one where if they're the leaders of the team, Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum should have said, we're going to talk, and should have said, well, we'll come out. We're going to take it on the chin here. We're going to go through with the media and say, it is what it is. And we'll take the hits and go from there. And instead it was left to Marcus Smart, now Horford, to take all of it. And that's just, extremely frustrating. It's, this is, it was going into last night's game, other than the Toronto game where they get completely outplayed, out hustled and everything. You could really look at it and say, all right, they lost in double overtime to the Knicks. They lost a close game to Washington at home where they, could have won. Then they lost in double overtime to the Wizards. You could have been looking at it very easily saying, all right, this team's 2-4, but they could be, maybe even 5-1. It's, it really was that Toronto one was the only one that was a, outright, butt kicking loss. And then you come back into this one they're right there. They had it, and it just completely fell apart on them. Now, I don't want to go too crazy. Again, we're only 7 games into the season. At least the last couple games, this hasn't been a game where conversation about effort and all that stuff with the Celtics, but it's just some of the same old issues keep coming up, and that's just not a good place where you want to be.
First of all, the Jaylen Brown situation, that's not a good look. Marcus Smart, I think it's pretty clear that the intent was not what people are making it out to be. But I think big picture, the solution to this is obvious, Keith. You have to fire Udoka. Fire the coach.
Yeah.
That's the problem. That's going to fix everything. Oh, no, wait, sorry. That's the Twitter trolls take on this situation.
You know what's funny is I said on that, because there are some people, right? You know the same. You have the same thing with the Lakers fans that I have with the Celtics fans. You get to know which one of your followers are the ones who are just they're when the team wins, they're the greatest thing ever. When the team loses, they're the worst.
Riding the
ever.
roller coaster.
And then you get to know which ones are they're kind of the rational, right down the middle fans who are reasonable about things and stuff like that. Well, even a couple of my reasonable Celtics fan followers have hit with, is Udoka the guy? And my whole thing is, I started out with, you wouldn't be saying this about a rookie player, 6 games in, 7 games in, that this kid's terrible, get him out of here. And then I was like, well, it's Twitter and it's the internet, so you probably would be. But the reality is he's on a learning curve too. It's going to take him time to figure stuff out. He's already starting to make some changes that we're seeing, and I'm not saying he's a great coach, because quite frankly, we don't know. We have no idea. There's no book to go to here that says, this guy, he's got it. He's the guy and all that. So it's just like I said, it's not good right now. It may get worse before it gets better, and then we'll see from there.
This is something that we see around the NBA, though. This is not just a Celtics thing. This is fans around the league, where it's because of just the nature of fandom, where you're seeing things from afar and you see something that you don't like, right? So on the television, you see, why is this guy in? I would rather have this guy in. Oh, it's the coach. He's the problem, right? That's the knee-jerk reaction to anything that's bad with a team. We tend to look at, it must be the coach drew up that play. That's why that happened. The coach is the problem. And that's kind of our first scapegoat, if you will, when things are not going well. And so it doesn't surprise me that people are already saying fire the coach. But look, a coach getting fired 7 games into a season is not very realistic, Mike Brown excluded, right? Like it just doesn't happen very often.
Or Earl Watson.
Yeah, right. I mean, it's just not something.
But those guys were also not in year 1. They were in year 2. So
Anyway, it's like, I don't know, declining the 3rd-year option on a player that you just drafted number 10 overall. It's ridiculous.
Oh man, Suns catching strays.
That's right. Take that, Phoenix.
All right, let's move on. I don't want to talk about this anymore. Let's get different. Next topic.
Let's go to Lou Williams saying it's probably his last season. He got drafted at 17, right? He was one of the high school to the NBA guys.
2005.
Yeah, I mean, he's been around forever.
And people forget, mid-second round pick.
Yeah.
Too.
Yep.
Lou Will was. He's not a guy who was drafted, highly. This was a, dude who fought and scrapped his way onto the roster to some extent.
This is the kind of thing where, people get sad or whatever when somebody's career is over or is coming to an end, or, it's gonna be pretty close or whatever. And I get that. But Lou Williams, I mean, you gotta applaud him, right? Hell of a career to go from the second round to be 17 years in this league, to in some ways redefine the scorer off the bench position. How many teams said we're looking for a Lou Williams type player off of our bench in the last 5, 6, 7 years? He's really done an incredible job.
Won 6-man 3 times. I'm 100% in favor of renaming the 6-man award the Lou Williams / Jamal Crawford Memorial 6-Man of the Year award, because when I think 6 men, those are the first 2 guys who come to mind for me almost immediately. I just, they really did define that position for a decade, but almost 2. Between the 2 of them, if you stretch their 2 careers, because Jamal Crawford played a lot of years too. So here's Williams, get all the lemon pepper wings
That's
you want,
right.
my man, from Magic City. It's enjoy it if this is it.
Shooting percentages are down around the NBA so far this season. Some people have been saying it's the new foul rules that's allowing defenses to be a bit more aggressive. Others are saying maybe it's the basketball, a new basketball this year that was switched from Spalding to Wilson. Some players complaining, but Keith, I remember when they switched to the synthetic basketball with Spalding. Yep. The outcry against the Wilson ball this year has been nowhere near what we saw back then. When Steve Nash was saying his fingers were bleeding and stuff like that.
Yeah, we got a couple. I was coaching at the time at a high school, and we actually got some of the synthetic balls.
Oh, really?
Given to because they were like, we don't want them. When they switched back, we're not using these anymore, and they donated them. In the school I was coaching at, we got the balls. Awful. The high school kids didn't want to use them. They were like, these suck, and it was true. If anybody has ever played on the playground with kind of one of those rubbery balls, you kind of do get like the cuts and abrasions on your fingers if you're out there for hours and hours on end. Anybody who's a real hooper knows, right? If you're out there for hours, that's going to happen, and that's what happened with these balls. They sucked. This ball, it's not like that, but players are saying it's a little slicker, that they're a little. Some have said the opposite. It's a little tackier. Some feel like the Wilson is not raised like the Spalding was on it, so it's a little bit different. So yeah, it's funny because I tweeted about it this morning, and a lot of people, that tweet's got pretty good traction. A lot of people have come back with, man, it's just a ball. Right. Like I play with whatever. Yep. And it's like, that's not how it works. Like that'd be like, throwing Tiger Woods a mini golf putter, from the local mini golf course and being like, go win the Masters. Like, no, you change the equipment on these guys. They're so fine-tuned to working with that. Now, that said, they're going to figure it out. And why this one's not changing is, this is not Spalding saying, all right, we'll start digging out and remaking new basketballs the old way and all this. This is a new company, and there's millions upon millions of dollars invested here in this. They are not going to be changing to the old ball. That's not going to happen.
It's it's the kind of thing where the casual fan will say, "What are you talking about? I play pickup 5 nights a week, and whenever I go play, we just use whoever brought a ball. We'll grab that ball and we'll use that one. Whoever has the best ball, right? And we'll use that basketball. It's a different ball every single night. Why does it matter for the pros? Because they're used to training with that specific ball constantly, right? That's the only one they use. So to change it is a big deal because they've only used that one ball for some of them for a decade, right? Even more.
Oh, yeah, more. I mean, some of them, because some of these guys get like an official NBA ball when they're in high school, and they start working with that, and that's what they do their stuff with. I've played with Wilson balls before.
I always liked them.
They're heavily used. I've never had a problem with the Wilson ball. I have not handled one of these new ones. The Spalding ball though, it's so nice, man. If it feels like a pillow in your hand,
if it's broken in,
back to you perfect. Yeah, if it's broken.
If it's not, you're like, what is this?
Yeah, and I tell people too, because people are like, oh yeah, you can buy them. It's not the same. You're not getting the exact same ones as the league has, but those ones that the league has, because there's been times, let's just say, when we've been hanging out at shoot around back when we used to do such a thing pre-pandemic, and if the cart was just sitting there and waiting on people, you get a few shots up. There's nothing wrong with that.
Making a ring
every once in a while, and show why we're covering the league versus playing in it. But that NBA ball, man, it was not, it was sweet. So I get it. I get why guys are a little cranky. I tend to think shooting percentages are down, all of the above.
Yeah.
Right. It's early in the season, the new ball, the new foul rules, they're really allowing physical defense. I think it's all of the above. That's what's caused
this. And let me throw this is a little bit of an aside. It's related here. I have not been disappointed with the product that we've seen, even though shooting percentages are down. For the years, the league's been saying Scoring. That's what's going to bring fans in. And perhaps it's, obviously we are slightly obsessed about the NBA. So we're going to be watching it no matter what. So maybe the casual fan notices a difference. But to me, the games have been just as exciting, if not more exciting. Yeah. And I don't even notice that scoring is down. What I notice is that we're not taking so many free throws and stopping the game constantly, and I'll gladly take that trade-off if the shooting percentages are down a little bit. That's fine to me. So I'm hoping that things kind of stay as is in terms of the foul calls. I do agree. I think it's the defense. I don't think it's the ball so much.
Hey, let me hit one other thing, because this is not in our show rundown. I just thought of it, where you were saying the free throw shooting. Did you see Sham's tweet tonight?
Yes, and I'm trying to go back in my mind because I just did the Lakers media availability. They're gonna look at the take fouls. That's foul. Right.
Oh,
Thank
I'm so
you.
Happy. That makes me so happy. That just makes me the biggest smile I could get off of that. It needs to happen. This is I probably sound like a Grandpa Simpson yelling at the clouds.
It was obvious though. It had to happen.
It has to happen. And in the good thing, too, by no means am I saying I did this, because I did not. But when multiple media members are repeatedly tweeting about it night after night after night, it gets noticed. It is also a way that then the players feel like, hey, if they're talking about it, I can talk about it too, and everybody can get into it. So yeah, it's this is great.
Yes,
like this is the best. Let's get the game cleaned up. Let's get it more free flowing. Let's get it up and down. I like too, these games were starting, some of these games with so many free throws, they were starting to push the heck out of 3 hours at times to play a regulation basketball game. And I'm not one of these people who complains about how long baseball games are, or how long football games are, and those kind of things. But it does start to push. Now, it also, maybe it's a little bit different because I don't know how to say this without coming off like a jerk. It is our job. And there are times when it's like, all right, come on, let's get the workday moving here. When it's, a 10-point game with 5 minutes to go in the fourth quarter, and it's going to take 25 minutes because of a million free throws. There is times when it's like, yeah, we have the best job in the world. Don't get me wrong. I'm not complaining by any means, but there are times when it's a little like, all right, then I got to do post game. I got to do this. Then I got to get in the car. I got to drive home. And you're starting to do a little bit of math, and it's like, I get home until like 1:30 in the morning. Like, it starts to be a little there. So anything we could do to clean it up, let's do it.
That's true. That's true, right? And I've been in that situation, and I've been doing the math in my head, like thinking, okay, when are we actually getting out of here tonight? Especially when it's like a summer league game that goes to overtime, and you're like, come on, or a preseason game.
But that's a summer league game. That's called you get out of there.
I should have said preseason, right? A preseason game that goes to overtime, something like that. But meanwhile, of course, all of our viewers and listeners right now are rolling their eyes and saying, you guys cover basketball for a living. You get to watch basketball games for come on.
Yeah, I feel gross for it. That's fine. Go ahead and flame me in the comments on this video and on the podcast. I deserve all of it. I should not complain. This is the best, by far and away, the best job I've ever had. I love it so much. But yeah, it's now, all right. Let's get through one more cranky story, just because it kind of bums me out. It makes me sad. Health and safety protocols, man. Why are we back to this? I thought we were done. I get it. The pandemic's not over. I fully understand that. Hallelujah. That kids 5 to 11 can now get vaccinated, in my opinion. But we'll leave that there. But Kevin Love, Chris Middleton, Tobias Harris. Two key guys on playoff teams, and Kevin Love's been a key bench guy for a surprisingly good Cavs team early in the season.
Just beat the Hornets.
All out. Yeah, all out now, and we don't know for how long. Love and Harris, we know several games, so that presumably means that they've each had a positive test. Sources have indicated that Love is vaccinated, which sounds like it's then a breakthrough case. I've not seen the same on Harris, so I don't know. I don't want to speculate if he is or isn't. I don't know that he shared that or not.
The odds are that he is, but we don't know for sure. Just based on the NBA's numbers that they've put out in terms of how many are versus aren't, but we can't say for sure.
Yeah, math would say, right? Because we know we're down to like 15 total guys or whatever. Chris Middleton, we don't know either. We also don't know what his length of absence is going to be. The other two, there was reporting from the top news guys, I think it was Woj and Shams had those reports that they were going to be out for several days. We know it's 10 days minimum of quarantine time if you test positive. Middleton may have been more of a close contact to it. If he was, then that's a shorter time frame. So we'll see. We're going to find out with with that one. But yeah, just sucks with three guys, three key players on teams that are two teams that are playoff teams in the Sixers and Bucks, and then the Cavs, who maybe will be a playoff team. So
yeah, absolutely. Well, we'll see hopefully we don't get too many more of these, but again, getting them in rapid succession like this, not great. And more not great. Well, I mean, I guess you could look at this as glasses half full. Zion Williamson, 2 to 3 weeks away from practicing. 2 weeks away from being 2 weeks away. No, sorry, 2 to 3 weeks away from practicing.
This is like the sad show tonight. I don't like this. We need to pick this thing up, man.
I know. We've got some better ones to finish out the show, but yeah, Zion, and we've heard, obviously, we mentioned this on our last show, the weight concerns with him already, and now he's not even going to practice for 2 to 3 weeks, which means realistically, we could be looking at a month maybe till he gets back on the floor. I mean, how long are they going to want him to practice and ramp things up there before they actually put him into a game situation? It may be a while.
I'm thinking early December.
Yeah,
early December is the earliest we see him. Maybe mid-December at this point. And then is he going to be doesn't play back to backs? Is on a minutes limit, whatever it is? Are they going to do that burst thing again, which he very much hated? Well, we'll see. It just kind of sucks. I will also say too is there's this new trend in the NBA. We've talked about this a couple times, especially really kind of going back to last season's playoffs, but it's happening again. These teams just not being honest with injury stuff off the jump. Like this Zion thing, this is now we're finally getting actual clarity. But he broke his foot over the summer, and we found out at media day at the end of September. That's not. This should have been something everybody should have known. There's no competitive advantage gained here beyond the first game. You can kind of understand in the playoffs where, make them prepare for a guy or not. But I mean, at that point, even in the playoffs, they're preparing as if a guy's going to play, and then you take a bonus if he doesn't. You're not preparing as if guys don't play. So it's just, that's just frustrating. I don't like this.
No.
I'm not a big fantasy guy. I'm not a daily fantasy guy. I'm not a big gambler.
But it matters for that stuff.
Gambler, period. But it does matter for all that stuff, and that stuff is important to a lot of people who love and follow this league, and quite frankly, invest tons and tons of time and money into that part of the league. So that part's just really frustrating for me. That just be transparent right off the jump, as much as you can be. It's okay, like Kawhi Leonard. It's still like there's no timetable, but they've also said it's going to be a while. So like, we're not asking every day, with this stuff. And like, you shouldn't be finding out that, one of the league's absolute true young stars is, had a broken foot and not going to be available. We should not have found that out at media day. It also bananas that didn't leak.
Yeah.
Before. How did that not?
How did that not come out? I have no idea.
Yeah. And it's very clear because it's not one of those things where, it's like he broke it the day of like that morning. Like that's not what happened here. He didn't show up for his physical, and they found out it was broken because they were like, "No, it happened, blah 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 weeks ago." So just all right. Let's get to a good injury story. James Wiseman cleared to fully practice. He's going to be back soon for the Warriors. I think that's interesting for them. I think their second unit could use a little bit of scoring punch, and I think Wiseman will help that. And then it sounds like Klay Thompson getting closer to a return to practice. Still sounds like probably that timeline seems very fluid. It's we've heard holidays, we've heard first of the year. So my guess is any time between probably December 1st and January 1st for Klay Thompson.
Somewhere in there. Yeah, I mean, they're not going to push it. They're not going to, when he's ready, he's ready. And it sounds like he's getting closer, though.
You've gone 2 years.
Yeah, right.
There's no reason to try to push it 2 days.
No.
So, yeah, absolutely. Another positive story, just because we like stuff like this here, even though it does take a little intrigue out of the show for us. Damian Lillard basically very nicely said, "Thank you, Philly fans. I appreciate you chanting 'Come to Philly' or whatever it was." But I like
no,
this
thank
quote.
you.
"I'm 10 toes in Rip City." Like I thought that's just
It's a good
fun,
way to put
right?
it.
That's just a fun way to put it. I'm all in. So yeah, I think that's pretty cool. I think good to see he's gonna stick around. So that hopefully now puts an end to all this stuff. It was funny because I did see somebody replies like, "Yeah, you say that now when you're shooting 25%. We don't, they don't want you anymore." So, but it's like, come on, it's Damian Lillard.
Oh,
We
yeah.
gotta,
And
yeah,
he had a great quote about dealing with adversity. And it's a long
yeah,
quote, like he went into detail. So I'm not going to
yes,
read the whole thing. But
yeah.
if you're,
But go find
yeah,
it.
go find it. It's a fantastic way to look at adversity and the way to look at just kind of life in general. He's talking about basketball, but it's a great way to look at problem solving and dealing with tough situations and things like that. It was a very cool quote from him that was a lot more in depth than a just
Yep.
typical sports answer would be. So very cool to see Damian Lillard kind of elaborate his
And it
thoughts on that.
really applies to the idea of it being early in
Yes.
the season
Hmm.
because he touched on that as well. Like but yeah, it's cool. I think when we look back on it in I don't even know like how many years. I think we're gonna look back on it and be like, man, that was pretty cool.
Yeah.
Like Dame's whole deal, like his whole thing, and it is, it's there's still something special when a guy, goes, wire to wire with the same
Yeah.
franchise. Like there's just something cool about that. And I mean, better than me because we talk, on here and off here. I don't fault guys when they go try to get a ring too. Like I don't have any problem with that
Sure.
because if we're gonna judge that as one of the number one criteria for all time rankings and everything else, I have no issue with it. But yeah, I'm just kind of hoping he hangs out there for a little while longer.
Last thing we've got is Kevin Porter Jr.
Yeah.
Team option picked
Yep.
up there. So good news
Yep.
for him as kind of the team options kind of dwindle as those are we're closing that book here.
Yeah, I think what is good too is this is a guy who came into the league with a little bit of baggage.
Hmm.
He was drafted at the end of the first round and then immediately traded by the Pistons to the Cavs with the idea of you're going to take less than the full rookie scale amount, which rarely happens because he had some baggage coming in, and then after that had some issues in Cleveland. Got him to Houston, got him with the right people in Houston, and then really had a kind of breakout season last year. And now looks like he's going to be a big part of what they're trying to build
Hmm.
there with the Rockets. So good on Kevin Porter for getting things right and figuring out and becoming a really productive player. Even if let's get the turnovers under control, my
Yes.
man. Like that, but that goes for the entire
That's
Rockets team.
yeah.
When otherwise wear a helmet if you're sitting close to the floor in Houston because you might get a ball off the dome
To
otherwise.
give you an example, so like I've seen in the last few days, I've seen a lot of fans complaining about Team X's announce crew, right? And how some announcers are not that great, others are better. There's a lot of announcers that are very homerish. There's some that try to play down the middle or whatever. The Lakers announce crew, Stu Lance and Bill McDonald, they tend to be more towards the middle. Of course, they're going to lean a little bit towards Lakers, but they're not like San Antonio's announce crew is known for being very one-sided and things like that.
Oh yeah,
And so there's some varieties
yeah.
among different announce crews. But anyway, Bill McDonald and Stu Lance, they're trying to, in the last game with the Lakers and the Rockets, they're trying to play things down the middle. And they're being as close as they can, but the game had gotten out of hand. It wasn't pretty. And Stu Lance, who's been doing this forever, right? He's been doing this forever. He just basically checked out on air and spent his time digging through stats. So it's just Bill McDonald talking. He's digging through stats, trying to find out what the record was for turnovers in a game because the Rockets were getting close to it. That's how many turnovers they had. He knew that it was somewhere close to the record. And so he took a bunch of time on air because the game was a second thought at that point. And so he was looking up stats to find out how many more turnovers the Rockets had to get in order to hit the record.
My favorite one of like of that kind of thing is baseball. Just because in the 162 game baseball season, there's gonna be a couple where like it's just the game's out of hand. There's nothing interesting happening.
Right.
Baseball is also a little different too, right? Because there's no clock.
Yeah.
So they're just kind of, they're trying to get through it. And what I think is like absolutely amazing is when it goes completely off the rails and then the announcers, like, they can't even keep it straight anymore.
Yeah.
Like, they're laughing, they're just, it's because then that's when it becomes relatable, right? That's when it's almost like, oh man, they're kind of like us, hanging out watching a game like with our boys and just shooting the breeze, I guess. So I'll keep it family friendly and so I do think it's that's pretty funny. I love when that stuff happens. So I did not happen to catch that part of it live. But yeah, what I do on League Pass. Somebody asked me this on League Pass because I've tweeted a couple times the picture of the 8-box on DirecTV, which that's my new favorite thing in the world. I absolutely love it. When the Celtics play, just because of the nature of my job, I watch the Celtics. I generally dial in. I'll have another game on another screen and I'll pop into it on occasion and pop in and out. But when it's not, what I'll do is I do like that one now, but I'll flip in and out. But I tend to go with the home announced teams just because that you're getting different perspectives there. And I'll see every team roughly equally throughout the course of the year. So I'll pop in and out and all that. But there are a couple, and I don't want to get into them here because I don't want to be insulting. Right. I can't do it. There's a couple that I'm like, I'm out.
Well, there's some where it's so over the top where when they if a foul gets called against their team and it's a legitimate foul and they are beside themselves and angry and I'm like, well, that was pretty clearly a foul and it gets a little bit extreme sometimes. So I agree. There's some that I try to avoid as well.
One of my favorites right now, and it's really fun because they're a fun team and they're playing well, is the Hornets. I think it might be Eric Collins. I apologize if I have the name incorrect. Their lead broadcast guy on their home broadcast. He's been this way forever, so it's not just now. But now he's like over the top. It's like this is like a legit call. It's like Miles Bridges with a pull-up, yes! Yeah. He goes crazy, and he's like, the Hornets lead 6-2. Yeah. 11 minutes left in the first quarter. And it's like, he's so fired up about everything the Hornets do. You can't help but get pulled in and be there with him. Like, you're there on that ride with him to be like, yeah. And it's like, I remember when, I want to say when Kevin Harlan maybe was the Wolves guy. I may be making that up. I might have that wrong, but I just remember him doing Wolves games back when KG was on the Wolves, and that's when I remember him, breaking out he went up high and came down hard, and I just those broadcasters that stand out and pull you into the game, I love it. It's just give me that all the time versus the guys who are just they're obviously bland, they're bitter, they're cranky and all that.
Yes,
I'm all about
for sure. 100%. Yep. And back in the day I was the one, or my dad was the one really making this decision. We would turn off the volume on the TV to listen to Chick Hearn on the radio because that was just magical, Yep. So
the Lakers for a while, didn't he simulcast the fourth quarter or something like that? Wasn't that what it was? On TV and on the radio?
Yep, he would say on the simulcast. Cool. Yep.
The Celtics guys had it. The Celtics guy, Johnny Most, was people now know Tommy Heinsohn because of League Pass and all that, and RIP to Tommy, RIP to Johnny Most and Chick Hearn as well. But people knew Tommy Heinsohn as he'd yell and scream and all this stuff. Well, Johnny Most on the radio, he was the radio guy when I was a kid growing up, and Johnny Most would. One of the favorite things to do, same thing. You'd mute the TV and you'd listen to Johnny Most call a game on the radio. And Larry Bird would drive to the basket. Someone would breathe on him, be like, oh my God, they're killing Larry Bird out there tonight. They're throwing him around into the front row. And it's the radio. So the people who are listening on the radio have they're like, Larry Bird, he must be dead. And it's nope, he's fine. It's just, guy breathed on him as he went by. But my most favorite thing was this tells you the time and era, and it was in the 80s. He would smoke while he was calling the games. Johnny Most would, and one time he dropped his cigarette and set his pants on
Oh my
fire
gosh.
while he was on the broadcast. Yeah, so just to give a sense of what he was, he had this super. You can imagine, right? The super gravelly voice. He's the one. If you hear the two famous calls, Havlicek stole the ball, right? That famous call, that's him. In the one where Bird has the steal against the Pistons, and it's there's a steal by Bird on the lead to DJ, lays it up and in. I'll never forget it because I remember watching it live. That's also his call as well. So that's that's just a couple of things there that are really fun stuff. But yeah, man, I get super into it, and that's the stuff like that I love about League Pass, right? You get popping in, and it kind of feels like with some of these guys, it's like, yeah, man, I'm popping in with my friends here to enjoy a little bit of time and a little bit of fun. But you, my friend, have to go cover the game. So we should probably wrap this up and call it a night, as we're doing a late night version of the front office.
Keith, I do want to finish with one thing, and I think you will like this. Mike Gorman, who does the Celtics called now. And this was back when Tommy Heinsohn was still around, but he wasn't traveling, right? So I was in Phoenix for a game, and I went and as a favor to a friend, I went and covered the Celtics in Phoenix. And I went and I walk into their cafeteria area or whatever, like their dinner area. And I went and I got my dinner, and I was like, well, who do I want to sit with? And I went, you know what? Screw it. I'm going to go and sit with the Celtics announcers since I'm covering them today. And so I went and I sat down with them, and it was Brian Scalabrine and Mike Gorman, and they're sitting there, and I sit down, I introduced myself, and they asked, and they were super welcoming, super nice. And they said, what do you do? I said, well, I'm actually here for so-and-so covering the Celtics tonight. I said, but I actually cover the Lakers. And I was thinking, okay, here it comes. They're going to give me crap and all this kind of stuff, right? No, they were just the nicest, most welcoming people. Scalabrine started
Mike Gorman.
Yes, Brian Scalabrine started debating about, what sets the Lakers were running and things like that, and whether or not certain things were working. Very, very cool, and just great people to meet in person. So that was just a great experience with the Celtics announce crew.
Yeah, man, we're all partial to our people, but Mike Gorman literally has been the voice of my entire basketball fandom. Like from a kid all the way to now, like he's called the games, and losing Tommy was really rough because there's just been it just doesn't feel the same. And Scal does a great job. A lot of people hate on Scal, and I think part of it is he's not Tommy. So I think people have, that's hard for people, but it's made it real that someday Mike Gorman won't be there, and that just it's just that will never be the same. He has periods where he takes some time off, he won't do some trips too, and they'll send other people, and it's not the same. It is just not the same watching the Celtics when it's not Mike Gorman. And especially like I do, when you live out of market sometimes too, you have to, if they're on League Pass or not, or on NBA
you
TV,
get the other team.
Sometimes you're watching your team, but you're getting the other team's announce crew, and it always feels weird. It's you can make it work when it's ESPN, TNT, because you get it, right? But NBA TV, it's but I always try to take that as all right, let me hear what they think of the team I cover on a day-to-day basis. But yeah, that's awesome, man. Mike Gorman he's just the best. I love it. All right, I'm going to break a little news for you. LeBron's going to play tonight, and he's going to start.
They mentioned on Vogel's pregame presser that we did just a little bit ago. He said he's questionable, but he was hopeful he was going to play. LeBron's been putting on Instagram that he's so pumped to play tonight and all that. So it was pretty clear he was going to play, but they had him officially listed as questionable, so they had to say
take him with the small lineup though. I like it. The AD at the 5 group. Yep. Yeah, that's good. We'll talk about that more though. Here's my prediction for tonight. The Houston Rockets go into in LA. They go into Los Angeles, and they only turn it over 22
times. That's
22 times.
Man, you are optimistic about the Rockets.
Yeah. All right, man. Enjoy your game. All right,
everybody. Make sure you do subscribe to the NBA Front Office YouTube channel. Don't forget to turn on those notifications as well. Till next time, stay safe. See ya.